Hey there guys, Super Hamuel here. Welcome to the third time that I'm recording part 3 of Let's Play Spider-Man for the Game Boy Advance. Now, I have added some new lore to the Spider Cult in response to this. As members of the Spider-Man cult, we must accept that our natural enemy is barrels. That's the only explanation I can give for why this part is so cursed. The first time I recorded it, I accidentally deleted the video file. The second time I recorded it, I accidentally didn't have any audio. This is it. The real time. The real game. Now before we get into it, we need to address one quick thing about our bingo sheet here. I didn't have construction site checked, because I totally forgot that I ran into a construction site. Also, spoiler alert for later, you know how this is key cards? I'm choosing to count that as any colored key. I don't know why I would mention that now. Just be aware of that. Anyway, here's one of the issues with the Curse of the Barrels, y'all. Barrels aren't interesting. So my whole job in this video is to say funny and entertaining things to you about what's happening on the screen. What's happening on the screen is barrels. I'm sorry. Listen. If John Mulaney and George Carlin and, Brian David Gilbert, all equivalent talents, all sat together, and they all did their best, I'm sure that they could make barrels funny. I can't do it. I've been out of the game too long. So, instead of talking about the barrels, we're gonna expand the lore together. So let's think about this, okay? So we have barrels. Barrels are the enemy of the Spider Cult because they are not funny, and are not interesting. This leads me to believe that the Spider Cult exists as a way to create fun... Spider-Man is an interesting hero, right? So as members of the Spider Cult, it is our job to honor Spider-Man by being funny and interesting. Barrels are the antithesis of that, and therefore, they are our enemy. Does this make sense? I hope it makes sense. I'll pass you a pamphlet. You will find me outside of your door, handing out pamphlets about the Spider Cult. Don't ask me how I got your address. It's a new YouTube feature. We're beta testing it. Something else I should mention. Since I've had to do this 3 times, I've had time to read the comments, and I have discovered from the comments that if you collect all the gold little Spider-Man dudes, you get some kind of really cool Spider-Man power. You know, the ones that I never use because I'm dumb? Well, you get a really cool one of those. So, I need to get... Oh, it's going so slow! I got stuck. So, I'm gonna try to get all of them, but admittedly they are kind of hard to grab, so that's a little bit of an issue. But, you know, we're trying. Listen, here at Super Hamuel Industries, customer satisfaction is our... Don't kick me. I also learned that if you don't do that fast enough, the opportunity just goes away. This is a pretty cool power, Arachnid Strength. It gives you the power to just smack down your enemies. Which I do appreciate. I think this is supposed to be a water tower. They definitely used the same asset for, like, a New York subway thing later, mark my words. I haven't played it, but that just doesn't that look like a subway thing? I wish to be strang. You cannot win by strength alone. Whoa! I didn't intend to do that fancy flip, but I won't complain about it. Grab that health. That is absolutely a trick 1-up, and we do not grab it. I guess it's probably not a trick, but... whatever. Come on, Spider-Man. Come on, Spider-Man. Alright. listen, since this level is so boring, I want to talk to you about my favorite thing in the original Spider-Man movie. It's a very subtle little moment, but I think you'll agree with me that it's the greatest thing ever put to film. I will bet money that you do. So if you haven't watched the original Spider-Man movie in a while, you know, he fights Bonesaw, and then and then there's the robbery, and the guy comes and he won't help the guy who runs the wrestling thing because he cheated him out of money. Okay, but when that guy gets robbed, the robber who shows up, they must have just, like, in the ads been, like, looking for the world's most New York individual in the history of time. Because he doesn't just come up and rob this guy, he comes up and says, and you have to say it like this, "Put the money in the bag." And I think about that a distressing amount. Like, I'll just be hanging out at home, whatever, making some dinner, hanging out with my girlfriend, and all of a sudden I'll just go, "Put the money in the bag." It's... Don't go to sleep, computer. It just means a lot to me. That did not mean a lot to me. The first movie is, you know, it was right after 9/11, and I think they really wanted it to be, like, as New York as possible. That scene where all the New Yorkers are on the subway and they're, like, throwing trash at the Green Goblin, and one of them goes, "You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us," it makes me happy. It's a complete cheeseball scene, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I feel like... So, obviously, the original trilogy is great. I love it. I haven't really seen that much of the new Spider-Mans. Like, I've seen a little bit from Homecoming, but honestly not the whole movie. And I didn't see very much from Far From Home at all. And then the Amazing Spider-Man... Those are interesting. Second one's a garbage fire. But I will say... There are some things about it that I do kind of gel with, and there are some things about The Amazing Spider-Man that I think are a little bit underrated. Obviously, a lot of people have talked about the chemistry between Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone. That's pretty great. Obviously, there was a lot of studio interference with the second one. And aside from the hilarious, like, dubstep that they play, you know, there's not that much... It's a pretty boring movie. Meth Head Green Goblin is also hilarious. But in the first one, there's this really, really wonderful scene. Spider-Man kind of starts off as a huge jerk in that movie, and I think it's intentional. Like, he's just going around looking for revenge. He's not heroic at all. And then there's that moment on the bridge where he has to rescue a kid, and he has to, like, have the kid put on the mask, and that's how the kid gets the bravery to, like, climb up the car that's falling off a bridge. It's a really lovely scene. Genuinely one of my favorite scenes in any Spider-Man movie. And, I just noticed now that when the guy throws the Molotov cocktail, there's a skull in the mushroom cloud. What in the world? But yeah, I think there are some really lovely little human moments in that first one that I really like. That don't get enough credit. The lizard looks terrible, though. I will give it that. The villain design for those movies was whack. I am sad we never got to see Spider-Man 4, though, even though I do think that the Vulture is kind of a silly villain. I would like to see what Sam Raimi would have done with it. Everything that I've read about it indicates that, like, he was disappointed with the way 3 came out. There was so much studio interference, you know, and he was like, alright, I'm gonna make up for it with 4. And, I think that's a real shame on Sony's part. Sony is such an interesting studio because they have no idea what they're doing, just at all. But that can be an advantage. A studio that knows what they're doing would not have made The Amazing Spider-Man 2. But a studio that knows what they're doing also probably wouldn't have made Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So, with Sony, you always roll the die, right? Amy Pascal just goes, nah, I don't know, that sounds good. And then greenlights it, and then maybe it'll be okay. Who can say? I really recommend, speaking of Sony and The Amazing Spider-Man, if you haven't read the leaked email about pitching a bunch of thoughts for what can be in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 from like that big Sony email hack, oh my god, you owe it to yourself, friend. You absolutely owe it to yourself. Let me summarize for you. Actually, I've read it so many times I can probably quote it nearly word for word. Let me see. If you want to, look this up and read along with me and tell me how close I get. It's something like, "Hi, Amy. Just a couple of rando thoughts from 10,000 miles above. I've been thinking about Spider-Man and how to get him to appeal more to a millennial demographic. Here are my thoughts." And one of them is like, millennials are really into experiential oh no wait, the first one is, dubstep is proving to be the most influential music of the millennial generation. Maybe there's an EDM angle with Spider-Man. His moves would be amazing with a killer DJ behind him. Number 2 is like various forms of experiential exercise, such as Tough Mudder, Iron Man runs, veganism, etc. are really taking off with the youth. Often they will post these to social media with the caption, "NBD, no big deal," a form of humble bragging. Maybe Spider-Man could get into this. It's all NBD to him, of course. And then the last one, which is just amazing. The millennials these days are really into Snapchat. It has a very VIP feel, because Snapchat stories are invite only. Maybe there's a Snapchat angle with Spidey? Getting invited to Spider-Man's Snapchat story would be very buzzworthy and cool. Amy Pascal's response to it, by the way, was to say, "Love this." So... And now that I've went on that ramble, interesting things are on the screen again. It's Kraven the Hunter! This guy is actually kind of tricky to beat on my second time through Part 3. He gave me a real challenge, and you missed a lot of really bad play on my part. I feel like if kneecaps were the defining cheese strat of Spider-Man 2 for the GBA, then dive kick is the defining cheese strat of Spider-Man 1 for the GBA. I am not spacing properly. It actually does require kind of like some spacing to get working right. Oh gosh. Yeah, see? This also can happen. The hit detection is, I would say, there. Sometimes. It showed up for work, but like, it didn't get a lot of sleep last night, you know what I mean? Yay, there we go. I'm so glad that the part that actually got recorded was the part where I did that well, and not the part where I bumbled my way through it like a moron. Ah... And oh, sorry, I skipped that. Kraven's coming back. Also, I'm sorry about this. I'm about to do voice acting. This time, perhaps. But Kraven was just taking his measure. What of our other concerns?
Quest Aerospace is nearing completion of their project. We are in serious jeopardy if we go much longer without a solution.
Very well. Send in our insurance policy to buy us some time. Also redouble our efforts to capture this, quote, Spider-Man, unquote.
At once, Mr. Osborn.
Oh, and one more thing, lackey. Put the money in the bag. And I hope you will all put your likes, your comments, and subscribes in the bag. I'm so sorry for that segue. And enjoy your day, because that is the end of hopefully the last time I record Part 3 of Spider-Man GBA. Next time, Arnold Schwarzenegger talks to us on a TV, question mark? Goodbye. Oh, it's the shocker.